a retelling of the movie Insurgent. Enjoy the movie. The movie begins with old documentary footage of the commander of the U.S. Air Force explaining that, since 1947, they've received thousands of UFO reports from various sources. Then Major Keir, author of the book, Flying Saucers Are Real, insists that humans have encountered extraterrestrial objects. Shares the testimony of a pilot who in the airborne collided with a solid otherworldly, an object traveling at 500 miles per hour. It was a solid object, and it appeared to be, apparently from outer space. Later that night in one of the houses, the mother, father, and their two daughters are sitting down to dinner. The youngest daughter is reciting a prayer before the meal. Suddenly, the family feels a strange tremor as if there's an earthquake followed by explosion. Plunging, waking up, the parents are looking for their children. Looking out the window, the girl assumes it was a terrorist attack, but the father doesn't agree. He orders everyone to move away from the windows, warning that the air may be contaminated. At that moment, the eldest daughter begins to gasp for breath in her mouth, and blood spurts from her mouth. She dies shortly thereafter. And the mother is terrified and screams at the younger daughter to run away. But a few minutes later, she is also killed, as is her husband, and the eldest daughter of the little girl hides in closet, saves her life just a few moments. In New York City, the news is reporting on climate change, about climate change and the changes to come. However, the broadcast is interrupted by an urgent. The anchor receives news of a strange explosion, a bizarre explosion in a small town in northern Pennsylvania, population 1,300. The cause and exact number of casualties are still unknown. The Pentagon is investigating whether it was a terrorist attack or a natural disaster. Reporter Samantha is on the scene, and she's reporting that all the residents of the town are dead, and there are no survivors. The town is off limits, and it's known that the air is toxic. A woman named Lauren listens intently to the news in her at home later when she takes a bath in her inner mind. Strange memories of her relaxation are abruptly interrupted by a knock on the door. When the woman opens the door, she sees military personnel of the U.S. Army who urgently ask her to go with them to an explosion in Pennsylvania. Is a matter of national security, and they need her expertise. Arriving at the base with the military, she meets Colonel Emery's, her astrobiologist. He explains that a meteorite the size of a baseball fell. The size of a baseball, but something went wrong. A normal meteorite couldn't have released the kind of gas that killed all the people in the area. They've never encountered anything like this before. The colonel wants them to investigate. The scientists are getting ready for an expedition. But the colonel stops Lauren, thinking that there might be something extraterrestrial. He knows she's been writing books and believes in the existence of alien. Later, Lauren and Santiago go to the scene of the tragedy. On the way, he mentions that he read her book and shows her pictures of his sons, but she remains silent, absorbed in her own thoughts. They arrive at the site of the meteorite impact. They discover the crater. After looking around, Santiago's neighborhood comes to the conclusion that there is nothing interesting and that it has come for nothing. However, Lauren decides to take a picture of the crater, and she notices an unusual little red sprout. After scrutinizing the plant, she lies down next to it and strokes it. When she gets home that evening, she studies the picture of the plant and decides to check the news for similar cases. She finds a report about an incident in a similar town. In one of the interviews, the woman describes how a meteorite that caused the city to shut down due to the polluted air and numerous casualties. Rumor has it that there was an unusual seed that grew into a tree that caused the death of nearby animals. Though the tree was cut down, shocked, Lauren searches for the woman's name and learns that she was shot to death. The next day, Dr. Maria Zello and Dr. Cater perform an autopsy on Rob, who was killed in a meteorite explosion by military scientists and doctors. After a preliminary examination, Kate notices that the corpse has normal skin, as if the body is still alive when they make the first incision. The wound oozes a strange, silvery fluid which, after a few moments later, is drawn back into the body, and tightens the incision. Suddenly Rob gets up on the gurney, afraid for his safety. Kate leaves. "Oh, Karen Knight," reports the resurrected. Karen advises her to check for a pulse. Roba, carefully approaching the body. Maria notices there's no pulse. The skin is cold and the blood pressure is 0. It's just impossible. Suddenly, from far away, screams are heard, and upon discovering the cause, it becomes clear that the rest of the dead are also resurrected. News of the decision of the dead quickly spreads and journalists around the military base trying to get details. Lauren feels strangely uneasy. Santiago tries to help, but she assures him that she's all right. The doctors are examining the resurrected, show them pictures of their relatives, but they don't react. The governor arrives at the base, demanding an explanation as to why only 49 people have been resurrected out of thousands. Scientists speculate that these were closest to the epicenter of the explosion and inhaled the meteorite particles, changed their bodies and transformed them into something new. Everyone else died from the toxic gas, and being in the area of a defenseless suit explosion is dangerous. Lauren meets with the colonel, informs him that a similar explosion occurred in 2013 in a different town where people died from the same symptoms. She is sure it's not a terrorist attack but part of some larger plan. However, the colonel won't listen to her. At the meeting of military politicians and scientists to hear the Karen report, she claims that the resurrected have no pulse, no respiration, or brain activity. They don't sleep or eat. Their physiology indicates death, but their tissues contain substances that are impossible identifiable. It appears that their DNA is being transformed into something extraterrestrial. Karen's presentation. Lauren takes the floor, tells of a similar case in another, and suggests that the government covered up the truth by destroying an entire city. Insists it wasn't an accident and demanding answers. The president is asking for more evidence than videos and pictures from the internet. But Lauren has nothing else. Lauren goes to the store, buys a drink, and sits in her car and wallows in memories of her childhood in the hospital. Relatives try unsuccessfully to contact the resurrected. Soon Lauren enters the room and begins talking to one of the girls, sharing her grief over the death of her mother. Over her mother's death. Suddenly the resurrected girl grabs Lauren by the arm, which, shocking her, Lauren shares what happened with the colonel, claiming it has something to do with a mysterious sprout found at the site of the meteorite impact. Santiago intervenes and compares the situation to the prayers of Muslims who are always facing towards Mecca. He notes that people instinctively face north toward the site of the explosion. They're all looking north. What are you getting at is that they're Muslims? The colonel sighs heavily and reports that they've discovered a strange plant. The news is showing a giant tree whose origins are unknown. Lauren, watching the screen, has a strange sense of joy as the team of scientists in protective suits and Rob go to the tree. They notice that the resurrected man next to it begins to regain consciousness, and his eyes take on a bright blue hue. Rob decides to stay near the plant, claiming that the human environment is now deadly and I'm not going with you at the press conference. Lauren explains that this tree is a special gas that allows the resurrected to exist in this new world. Journalists are wondering how the aliens made it to Earth, to which Lauren replies that there are wormholes that connect us to other. After the show, Lauren is visited at home by her father. They have an awkward conversation about her childhood fascination with science and how her mother was concerned about how immersed she was in her science projects. Ignoring her father's words, to her father, she asks how he's doing. "What's up? A lonely man's business." Expresses regret and says he misses her. For her, as he comes closer, he notices that she is taking a step back. He sighs heavily. He bids her farewell and leaves the next day. The colonel informs Lauren that Rob only wants to talk to her. Tried to get him to talk to the whole department, but it didn't work out. He's prepared a list of questions for her to find out what this creature is, where it came from, and what it wants. Lauren goes to see Rob, sitting by a tree. He tells me that his planet had been destroyed. They were looking for a new home and they found the earth, and the seed of this tree doesn't grow anywhere else, and they gave them the coordinates of the land. To Lauren's curiosity, asks who provided this. Rob replies that it was someone from Earth named Supernova 94. This person tracked them down and made contact. A contact that allowed them to learn the strengths and weaknesses of humanity. That people are approaching the tree. Rob asks them to leave, but Lauren explains that they won't leave because the tree is destroying the Earth. Then he declares that they're used to fighting and won't leave. Calmly using his supernatural powers, Rob releases a wave of energy, causing the people around him screaming in pain as if they're going crazy, pouncing on each other and firing guns at each other. Lauren and a few other men manage to break free from Rob's grasp. Realizing that the tree must be destroyed, the military launches missiles at it, but the Katas fail to reach, as the tree is surrounded by a protective and elderly man. Listening to the news, learns about the dome around the tree and about a man nicknamed Supernova 94, who has made contact with an alien civilization. He goes into his room and pulls out some old notes, where he opens a notebook and sees the name Supernova 94 in large, circled. There are unusual sounds coming from the forests. From the forest, the earth is shaking like earthquakes, and in some cities, there are fogs that are killing. In India, multiple explosions, causing thousands of casualties in several. Martial law has been declared in several countries, and power has been transferred to the military. Farmers report that all their crops are gone. The rotting people are trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, Lauren goes to her father's house. Going to the barn where her lab used to be. She peers through the boarded-up window, hesitating whether or not she should go inside to see her father. She finally decides to leave. Returning to the tree, Rob explains that they got to the ground because of her, and reaching out he shows her past, which from time to time fragmented in her memory. Lauren, as a little girl riding in the car with her father, he asks her not to tell her mother because the place they're going to, where they were going, was very secret. Her father leaves the group of people, asking her to stay near the entrance. Lauren sneaks out to follow the group and overhears them talking about an extraterrestrial being that is incredibly a powerful, hostile, but highly intelligent creature with an advanced spacecraft and weaponry. After they leave, she approaches the capsule and somehow the creature sinks into her body. Back home, she asks to be given her own lab and begins constructing the device. Her parents are concerned about her behavior. She has become withdrawn and her knowledge exceeds the level of the average child. Over time, she successfully invents a communication device. Looking at the calendar, she introduced herself over Novo 94 and transmitted the coordinates of the Earth. Her parents put up with her eccentricity, but eventually forbid her from practicing science. Offended, Lauren promises her mother would soon die, and shortly after saying that, mother passed away, and it turns out that all of this, all thanks to alien creatures. Her worried father takes her to doctors who discovered a new form of DNA, like she's half human and half something else. Remembering all this, the woman cries, and Rob takes off her protective mask, saying that she doesn't need her anymore because now she's home. Now you're at home, the older man remembers intercepting the conversations of a girl named Supernova 94, but they never realize who she was talking to. Strange objects appear. They're spheres that are found everywhere in the forests, in the Sahara, on farms, in lakes, and in large cities. These objects emanate unusual sounds that are different. Some theories believe they grew from the ground, and others believe they've been delivered by a giant spaceship. Suddenly, the alien spheres explode all over the globe at the same time. Clouds of black smoke billowing in all directions. There's no way for people to evacuate and escape. The last surviving humans record a video where they say that the aliens have created the right atmosphere for themselves. Pods are connecting with the roots, poisoning the soil growing beneath their feet. And yet, the big question remains as to where they came from. The Earth is no longer fit for human life. The planet and evolution began. No one escaped, and all land species and plants died. No one survived, and now it's a completely different. As for Lauren, her journey has come to an end. She's finally home. And what do you think? What are the chances that aliens exist, and would we have a chance of surviving if they did? You liked the retelling? Please subscribe and give it a like.